When I hit a $2.5 million jackpot, my parents tried to pressure me into handing half to their beloved daughter. I said no. The next day, I was stunned to find them setting my lottery check on fire. They told me, if you won't split it, you won't see a cent. I couldn't stop laughing because the check they burned was actually. Can you imagine walking into your own apartment, only to find your own mother burning what she thinks is your winning lottery ticket, while your father coldly declares, if you won't share, you won't get a penny? Pretty shocking, right? But what if I told you their smug expressions instantly turned to pure disbelief because I just burst out laughing? How did it come to this, and why on earth was I laughing? Trust me, this family drama has a twist you will not see coming. My name's Mackenzie, I'm 34, and last month, my life changed overnight. I bought a lottery ticket on a whim, and against all odds, I won a multi-million-dollar jackpot. But when I refused to just hand over half of it to my sister, Brooke, their golden child, that's when all hell truly broke loose. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Ohio? Yeah, it was nothing like those picture-perfect family sitcoms. From the moment Brooke was born, when I was 6, it was painfully clear who the favorite was. Most parents try to hide their preferences, right? Not mine. They didn't even bother with the pretense. Brooke wanted dance lessons? Money found. I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math? I worked extra shifts at the local grocery store to pay for it myself. Brooke's artwork was plastered everywhere. My academic achievements were met with casual nods. That's nice, Mackenzie, but did you see what Brooke made today? It was a constant, undeniable imbalance. My parents weren't monsters, not really. They provided the basics, occasionally showed some genuine interest in my life. But that favoritism? It was like a shadow over everything. As we got older, the pattern just deepened. Brooke dropped out of college, 3 times, to find herself. My parents financially supported her through 3 different majors and 5 career changes. Meanwhile, I worked my way through school, maintained a scholarship, and still graduated with a mountain of student loan debt. By my 30s, I'd built a decent life on my own terms. I had a steady job as a marketing coordinator, a small but comfortable 1-bedroom apartment. Enough savings to treat myself sometimes, but those student loans? They still ate up a huge chunk of my budget. I wasn't wealthy, not at all, but I was fiercely proud of my independence. Then came that Tuesday. It started like any other. I was driving home from work, stopping for gas, mentally calculating every penny. You know the drill, how much can I afford until payday? While paying, I just impulsively added a lottery ticket. I barely ever played, maybe 2 or 3 times a year if the jackpot was huge. But that day, something just compelled me. You never know, right? The cashier said with a smile. Lightning has to strike somewhere, I replied, laughing it off, tucking the ticket into my wallet without a second thought. That evening, I was heating up leftover pasta, scrolling social media, half watching TV. The lottery drawing came on. And suddenly, I remembered my ticket. I pulled it out, fully expecting the usual disappointment, maybe 1 number, if I was lucky. The first number matched. Okay, weird. Then the second. By the third, I was sitting bolt upright, my heart starting to pound. 4th match, 5th match. When the final number matched, I literally stopped breathing. I checked and rechecked, convinced I was hallucinating. But there it was. All 6 numbers. The announcer said the jackpot was $2,500,000. I sat there, stunned, for almost 30 minutes, staring from the ticket to the TV. Eventually, I took a picture of it, then carefully put the ticket in a Ziploc bag, tucking it into my copy of Pride and Prejudice on the bookshelf. Safest place I could think of. My hands were shaking as I called my best friend, Rachel. You need to come over now, I managed to say, my voice tiny. And I'm not joking or exaggerating. Rachel arrived 20 minutes later, looking genuinely worried. What's wrong? Are you okay? She asked. Wordlessly, I showed her the ticket and the numbers I'd written down. Holy shit, she whispered, her eyes wide. Mackenzie. Holy shit. I asked, is it real? Can you check the numbers again? I'm afraid I'm hallucinating. She pulled out her phone, looked up the winning numbers. It's real. Oh my God, it's real. You just won $2,500,000. That night was a blur of disbelief, pure elation, and a tiny bit of fear. Rachel stayed over, and we talked until sunrise, just dreaming about the possibilities. What this could mean for my life. For the first time, I could pay off my student loans entirely. I could buy a house, not just any house, but a beautiful one with a yard. I could invest, travel, donate to causes I actually cared about. The next morning, I called in sick and contacted the State Lottery Commission. They confirmed everything and told me to come to their headquarters. Rachel drove me. I was too nervous to even get behind the wheel. At the office, they verified my ticket, my identity, explained the process. Lump sum or annuity. They also arranged for the ceremonial, big check photo opportunity, explaining the actual funds would take about 2 weeks to process electronically. As I posed with that oversized check, the reality finally started to sink in. My life had changed forever. But I had no idea how profoundly it would test my relationships and reveal truths about my family I'd always suspected, but never wanted to face. With the initial verification done and the photos taken, I went home with a folder of paperwork, a copy of that novelty check, and my head just spinning. The lottery officials had strongly advised keeping my win private until the funds were secured. Winners often find themselves besieged by long-lost relatives, investment opportunities, and charity cases, the rep had warned. Consider carefully who you tell and when. I knew she was right, but a part of me, a part I'm not proud of, felt this strange obligation to tell my family. Despite our complicated history, they were still my parents. And Brooke was still my sister. Maybe, just maybe, if they saw how I'd succeeded in this totally unexpected way, they would finally see me. After a few days of deliberation, I decided to share my news during Sunday dinner at their house, a monthly tradition I maintained more out of duty than enjoyment. I arrived early, helping my mother cook, mentally rehearsing how I'd drop the bombshell. "You seem different today," Mom observed, eyeing me as she chopped vegetables. "Did something happen at work?" "You could say something happened," I replied, a small smile I couldn't suppress. "But let's wait until everyone's here." My father joined us, asking about my apartment's persistent plumbing issues, problems I'd soon be able to leave behind forever. When we sat down to eat, I took a deep breath. "I have some news," I began, my heart pounding. "Something pretty incredible happened last week. I won the lottery." My parents stared at me in disbelief. "The lottery?" my father repeated. "Like $20? "No," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "The state lottery." I matched all 6 numbers. It's $2,500,000. The silence that followed was profound. Then, they both erupted in exclamations of shock and congratulations. My mother actually got up to hug me, something that rarely happened. "Oh my goodness, Mackenzie. This is unbelievable," she exclaimed. "Wait until Brooke hears this." And there it was. Not even a full minute of celebration before my sister was mentioned. As if on cue, the front door opened and Brooke swept in, fashionably late as usual. "Sorry I'm late, traffic was awful." What did I miss? My mother practically tripped over herself, rushing to deliver the news. Mackenzie won the lottery. $2,500,000. Brooke's expression shifted rapidly, surprise, then excitement, then something calculating. She hugged me with unusual enthusiasm. "That's amazing, Mac. We're going to have so much fun with this." I felt a knot form in my stomach at her use of "we." Before I could respond, my father chimed in. "This is perfect timing, actually. Brooke, tell your sister about your situation." Brooke, at least, had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "It's not a big deal, really. I'm just in a bit of a financial bind with the business." The business was her latest venture, an online boutique selling overpriced bohemian clothing she'd started 6 months ago after abandoning a marketing firm job. I'd already heard from my parents it wasn't going well. "It's more than a bit of a bind," my father corrected. "The credit card debt alone is nearly $30,000. And then there's the inventory loan." "Dad, please." Brooke interrupted, shooting him an annoyed look before turning back to me with a practiced smile. "But hey, that's not important right now. This is about your amazing news. Though, I mean, if you were thinking about helping family, I wouldn't say no." I sat there, my food forgotten, just processing what was happening. Not a single question about how I felt about winning. No inquiries about my plans or dreams. Just an immediate pivot to how my windfall could solve Brooke's problems. I haven't even received the money yet, I said carefully. There's a whole process, and I need to speak with financial advisors about the best way to, but you will help your sister, of course, my mother interjected, as if it were already decided. Family helps family, and with so much money, you can easily spare enough to clear Brooke's debts and give her business a proper chance. The knot in my stomach tightened into a hard ball. I haven't made any decisions yet, I said, trying to keep my voice even. This just happened, and I'm still processing everything. What's there to process? My father asked, his tone hardening. Your sister needs help, and now you can provide it. That's what family does. What about my student loans? I countered, the words just spilling out. Or the fact that I've been living paycheck to paycheck, trying to build some kind of security for myself? Don't I deserve to take care of my needs first? Don't be selfish, Mackenzie, my mother said, her voice laced with that disappointed tone I knew all too well. Your sister has a real business with real potential. This could be her big break. And what about my big break? I asked, a lifetime of resentment bubbling to the surface. For once in my life, something amazing has happened to me, and immediately it becomes about Brooke. Brooke's expression turned hurt. I can't believe you're being like this. If I won, I would share with you without hesitation. The hypocrisy of that statement was almost laughable. When Brooke had received a $10,000 inheritance from our grandmother 3 years ago, she'd spent every cent on a luxury vacation to Bali without so much as offering to take any of us to dinner. The rest of the meal devolved into a tense, agonizing conversation. My parents cycled through guilt trips and thinly veiled demands. By the time I left, the joy of my windfall had been thoroughly tarnished. Instead of celebrating with my family, I drove home, fighting back tears of frustration and disappointment. Once home, I poured myself a glass of wine and called Rachel. That bad? She asked after I recounted the dinner disaster. They didn't even wait 5 minutes before making it about Brooke. I said, my voice breaking. Not a single question about what this means for me, or what I might want to do with my own money. I'm not surprised, but I'm still sorry, Rachel replied gently. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath. Exactly what I planned before dinner. Pay off my debts, secure my future, make smart decisions, and apparently, set some very firm boundaries with my family. Little did I know just how severely those boundaries would be tested in the coming days. The morning after that disastrous dinner, my phone started ringing at 7:30 a.m. It was my mother. I've been thinking about our conversation last night, she began, no preamble. I think you were just overwhelmed, which is understandable, but now that you've had time to sleep on it, I'm sure you see how important it is to help your sister. I pinched the bridge of my nose, a headache already forming. Mom, it's not even 8, and I'm getting ready for work. Can we talk about this later? What's there to talk about? This is what family does, Mackenzie. Your father and I have always taught you girls to support each other. The irony of that statement was not lost on me. I need to go. We'll discuss this another time. Before she could respond, I ended the call and silenced my phone. I needed space to think clearly without their constant pressure. At work, I met with my supervisor, vaguely mentioning I might need some personal time in the coming weeks for a family situation. I wasn't ready to disclose my win yet. The funds hadn't even transferred. During my lunch break, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, and a text from Brooke. Hey sis, just wanted to say I totally understand you needing time to process everything. No pressure, but when you're ready to talk, I have some spreadsheets showing exactly how much I need to clear my debts and get the business profitable. Love you, Red Heart. I closed the message without responding. That afternoon, I contacted a financial advisor recommended by the Lottery Commission, someone experienced with sudden wealth. We scheduled an appointment for the next day. That evening, the calls continued. My father's voicemail was particularly pointed. Mackenzie, your mother is very upset by your behavior. We raised you better than this. Call us back immediately so we can discuss how you're going to help your sister. I didn't return the calls. Instead, I researched financial planning for lottery winners, making notes for my appointment. The next morning, my financial advisor, Miss Thornton, walked me through the realities of my winnings. After taxes, the lump sum would be closer to $1,400,000. Still life-changing, but not the full $2.5 million advertised. The first priority should be establishing an emergency fund and paying off high-interest debts, she advised. Then we can discuss diversified investments for long-term growth and security. When I mentioned my family's expectations, she frowned. Unfortunately, this is very common with lottery winners. I always advise my clients to establish clear boundaries early. Any gifts to family should be carefully considered and formally documented to avoid ongoing expectations. I left her office with a preliminary financial plan and a stronger resolve to protect my newfound security. But my family wasn't making it easy. That evening, I received a group text from my mother, including both my father and Brooke. We're all getting together tomorrow evening at 7 to discuss the family financial plan now that Mackenzie has come into this blessing. Mackenzie, please bring whatever paperwork you have so far so we can understand the timeline. I stared at the message in utter disbelief. The audacity of scheduling a family financial plan meeting without even consulting me was staggering. I replied simply, I won't be attending. My financial decisions are my own to make. The response was immediate and heated. My father called, and when I didn't answer, he left a voicemail. Your behavior is completely unacceptable. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By turning your back on your own sister when she needs help. I'm extremely disappointed in you. The barrage continued through the next day. Brooke tried a different approach, sending a long, emotional text about how her business was her dream, and with just a small portion of my winnings, she could make it successful and pay me back someday. Meanwhile, I returned to the lottery commission to finalize my decision to take the lump sum payment. I participated in another official big check ceremony for their press materials, holding the oversized novelty check while cameras flashed. The officials again reminded me that the actual funds would be processed within 2 weeks. After the ceremony, I stopped by a secure post office box I'd rented and deposited the ceremonial check, along with copies of all my lottery documentation. The originals were stored in a safe deposit box at my bank. I was taking no chances with these papers. When I arrived home that evening, I saw them. My parents and Brooke, sitting in their car outside my apartment building. My stomach dropped. I parked and reluctantly approached them. We need to talk, my father said firmly. Since you wouldn't come to us, we've come to you. I glanced around the parking lot, acutely aware this was not a conversation I wanted in public. Fine, I said, but I have nothing new to say. Once inside my small apartment, the tension was suffocating. My mother immediately began examining the space with thinly veiled disapproval, while my father positioned himself commandingly in the center of the living room. Brooke perched on the edge of my couch, looking uncomfortable but determined. This has gone on long enough, my father began. You've had time to process your good fortune, and now it's time to discuss how this will benefit the family. Specifically, my mother added, how much you'll be giving to Brooke to clear her debts and properly fund her business. I took a deep breath. I've thought about this a lot, and I've decided that I need to secure my own future first. I have student loans to pay off, retirement to plan for, and student loans. My father interrupted, incredulous. You're going to be a millionaire. Who cares about student loans? I do, I replied firmly. I've worked hard to stay afloat with those payments for years, and the money isn't as much as you think after taxes, but still plenty to help your sister. My mother insisted. Brooke leaned forward. Mac, I only need about $80,000 to clear everything and have a proper marketing budget. That's nothing compared to what you're getting. $80,000 is not nothing, I countered. And what happens when that runs out? Will you need another infusion of cash in 6 months? That won't happen. Brooke insisted, though her eyes slid away from mine. This is different. I just need a proper chance. Like the proper chance you had with graphic design, or interior decorating, or becoming a yoga instructor? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Each time Mom and Dad supported you financially, and each time you abandoned it when it got difficult. That's enough, my father said sharply. Your sister is trying to build something of her own. All she needs is adequate capital, which you now have in abundance. This is about family responsibility, Mackenzie. Where was this family responsibility when I was working 2 jobs to pay for college? I asked, years of resentment finally spilling over. Where was it when I needed help with a down payment for a car so I could get to work? You've always had different standards for Brooke and me. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. It is true, and we all know it, I said, my voice trembling slightly. For once in my life, something good has happened to me, and I deserve to enjoy it without guilt or manipulation. Brooke's voice was venomous. I can't believe you're being so selfish. The argument raged for over an hour, growing increasingly heated. My parents cycled through guilt, anger, and even attempts at negotiation. What about $40,000 instead? Brooke alternated between playing the victim and making veiled accusations about my character. Finally, emotionally exhausted, I just asked them to leave. I've made my decision. I won't be bullied or manipulated into changing my mind. My father's face hardened. If this is your attitude, don't expect to remain part of this family. The words hit like a physical blow, but I stood my ground. If your acceptance is conditional on me giving away my financial security, then maybe that's for the best. After they left, I collapsed onto my couch, emotionally drained, but oddly relieved. I had finally stood up for myself after decades of accepting second-place status. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I called Rachel and asked if I could stay at her place for a few days. I need some space from my family, and I don't trust them not to show up again. Of course, she said immediately. Pack a bag and come over. Wine will be waiting. As I packed, I had no idea how prophetic my distrust would prove to be. I spent 3 relatively peaceful days at Rachel's apartment, going to work as usual, but returning to her place. My family continued their campaign of calls and texts, but I responded minimally, usually with simple variations of "my decision is final." On the 4th day, I realized I needed to retrieve some work documents I'd left at my apartment. Rachel offered to go with me, but she had an important meeting. I'll be fine, I assured her. I'll grab what I need and be out in 10 minutes. I chose my lunch break, thinking they'd be at work or otherwise occupied. As I approached my apartment door, everything seemed normal. I unlocked it and stepped inside. Immediately, I sensed something was wrong. There were voices coming from my living room. I froze, my heart pounding, before recognizing my parents' voices. They were in my apartment. For a moment, I considered backing out quietly and calling the police, but anger overrode caution. I strode into the living room. "What are you doing in my apartment?" I demanded. My mother and father were standing by my coffee table. Between them, in a small metal trash can I recognized from my own kitchen, flames were rising from what looked like paper. With a jolt of horror, I realized what was happening. My mother was burning what appeared to be my lottery check. My father turned to me, his expression cold, determined. "If you won't share, you won't get a penny." I rushed forward, but the damage was already done. The paper was mostly ash, flames consuming what little remained. My mother stepped back, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. "Now we can discuss a fair arrangement," she said. "You'll need to reapply for the prize." I stared at them in shock, my mind racing. How had they gotten in? What exactly had they burned? And most importantly, did they really think this would work? "How did you get into my apartment?" I managed to ask, my voice surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "We still had the spare key you gave us last year when you had the flu," my father replied matter-of-factly. "You never asked for it back." The violation of my space. The calculated nature of their actions. It was almost too much to comprehend. And yet, as the initial shock began to fade, something unexpected happened. I started to laugh. It began as a small chuckle and quickly grew into full-blown, almost hysterical laughter. My parents exchanged confused glances, clearly unprepared for this reaction. "What's so funny?" my mother demanded. "Do you think this is a joke?" I struggled to compose myself, wiping tears from my eyes. "Actually, yes. This is hilarious." "You've lost your mind," my father said, his confidence wavering slightly. No, I replied, my laughter subsiding, but a wide smile remaining on my face. I finally found clarity. Do you really think that's the actual lottery check? Now it was their turn to look confused. My mother glanced at the smoldering remains in the trash can. What do you mean? We saw the photos online from the lottery commission. You holding the check. That oversized check is a prop for photos, I explained, a strange calm settling over me. It's not the actual payment method. No lottery commission hands out real checks for millions of dollars like that. Their expressions began to shift from confusion to uncertainty. The actual payment is being processed electronically, I continued. What you just burned was a commemorative copy I received as a souvenir. It has no monetary value whatsoever. The color drained from my mother's face. My father, always quick to bluster when challenged, shook his head. You're lying. You're just saying that because we destroyed it. In response, I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and turned the screen towards them, showing a message from the Lottery Commission confirming my electronic funds transfer. The money will be deposited directly into an account I've set up specifically for this purpose, I said calmly. There was never a real check to burn. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stood frozen, the reality of their failed manipulation sinking in. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice small and suddenly conciliatory. Mackenzie, we were just trying to break into my apartment and destroy what you thought was my financial security, I finished for her. Yes, I can see that. You're blowing this out of proportion, my father attempted, his authoritative tone returning. We're your parents. We were just trying to bring you to your senses by committing breaking and entering and attempted destruction of property. I shook my head in disbelief. Do you have any idea how unhinged that sounds? Just then, the front door opened and Brooke walked in, carrying a takeout bag. She stopped short when she saw me. Oh, you're here. She looked nervously between me and our parents. I was just bringing lunch for Mom and Dad while they talked to you. While they trespassed in my apartment and tried to destroy what they thought was my lottery check, I corrected, watching her eyes widen. I didn't know they were going to do that, she protested quickly. They just said they were going to wait for you to come home so we could all talk again. Whether she was telling the truth or not didn't really matter anymore. The fact that any of them thought it was acceptable to enter my home without permission spoke volumes. All of you need to leave. Now. My voice was steady, but there was no mistaking the finality. Mackenzie, please. My mother began, her tone shifting to pleading. We made a mistake. We were just so worried about the family being torn apart over money. No, I countered. You are worried about losing access to money you believe you're entitled to. There's a difference. After everything we've done for you, my father started. That's exactly the problem, I interrupted. You've convinced yourselves you've done so much for me, when the reality is I've been largely on my own since I was a teenager. You're not entitled to my lottery winnings, and your actions today have shown me exactly who you are. I moved to the door and held it open. Leave now, or I call the police and report a breaking and entering. Your choice. They gathered their things in stunned silence. As Brooke passed me at the door, she paused. This isn't fair. You're being cruel. No, Brooke, I replied quietly. Cruel is expecting someone to sacrifice their financial security for your series of failed ventures. Cruel is supportive parents who would break into your sister's apartment to destroy her property. You've always been the favorite, and you've used that to your advantage your entire life. That ends today. After they left, I immediately called a locksmith to change my locks and started researching security systems. I called Rachel to update her. They did what? She exclaimed. That's insane. Are you okay? Strangely, yes, I replied, surveying my apartment. I think this needed to happen. The illusion is gone now. I see them clearly for who they are, and it's actually liberating. That night, I received a flurry of texts from extended family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, all expressing concern about the family rift and urging me to reconsider my harsh stance. Clearly, my parents had been busy spinning their version of events. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I focused on finishing my packing. I had already given notice at my apartment and found a short-term rental in a secure building across town. No one in my family knew the address, and I intended to keep it that way. As I sealed the last box, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The money hadn't even hit my account yet, but I was already experiencing a different kind of wealth, the richness of clarity, and the luxury of finally prioritizing myself. The day after the burning incident, I took a personal day to handle several important matters. First, I met with a lawyer recommended by Miss Thornton to discuss the legality of my family's actions and how to protect myself. Breaking and entering is a criminal offense, Miss Patterson, the lawyer, explained. As is destruction of property, even if what they destroyed was ultimately just a souvenir. I don't necessarily want to press charges, I said, still conflicted despite everything. I just want them to leave me alone. A restraining order might be appropriate, then, she suggested. And I'd recommend documenting everything, just in case their behavior escalates further. Next, I visited the bank where I'd set up the account for my lottery winnings. The manager assured me all security measures were in place, including requiring in-person ID for any transactions. We've worked with lottery winners before, she explained. Your account has our highest security protocols. No one can access it without your physical presence and multiple forms of ID. As a final precaution, I contacted the Lottery Commission to alert them to my family's behavior. Unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think, the representative said sympathetically. Rest assured, we will not discuss your winnings with anyone but you, regardless of their claimed relationship. With these safeguards in place, I returned to my newly secured apartment to finish packing for my move the following day. As I sorted through my belongings, deciding what to take and what to donate, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello, I answered cautiously. Mackenzie, it's Aunt Helen. My mother's sister had always been somewhat of a neutral party in family dynamics, neither encouraging my parents' favoritism nor actively opposing it. Aunt Helen, I responded, my tone guarded. I assume you've heard some version of recent events. I've heard your mother's version, she confirmed. But I've known your mother my entire life, so I can read between the lines. What really happened? Something in her voice, a genuine concern without judgment, prompted me to tell her everything, from the lottery win, to the break-in, to the ceremonial check burning. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. They broke into your apartment and burned what they thought was your check, she finally asked, her voice a mixture of horror and disbelief. Yes, I confirmed. And they seemed to genuinely believe that would somehow force me to share the money with Brooke. Good Lord, she muttered. I knew your mother could be dramatic, but this is criminal behavior. The irony is there was never an actual check to burn, I explained. The lottery doesn't work that way. The giant check from the ceremony is just for publicity photos. The real payment is processed electronically. Aunt Helen gave a short, incredulous laugh. So, they committed a crime for absolutely nothing? Essentially, yes. And the look on their faces when I explained that to them. Despite everything, I found myself smiling at the absurdity of it all. I can imagine, she said. Listen, Mackenzie, I'm sorry this happened to you, and I'm sorry that your win has been tainted by all this ugliness. You deserve to enjoy your good fortune without this drama. Her understanding was unexpected and touching. Thank you, Aunt Helen. That means a lot. For what it's worth, she added, your mother has been calling everyone in the family trying to rally support for her side. But after hearing what really happened, I think you'll find most of us are appalled by their behavior. After we hung up, I felt a small measure of relief, knowing that at least some of my extended family understood the reality of the situation. The next day, as professional movers loaded my belongings into their truck, my phone began ringing repeatedly. It was my parents. After the fifth call in 10 minutes, I finally answered. What do you want? I asked, my patience completely exhausted. We need to talk, my father said, his tone notably less commanding than usual. Your mother and I have been discussing things, and we realize we may have overreacted. Overreacted? I repeated, incredulously. You broke into my apartment and tried to destroy what you thought was my financial security. That's not overreacting. That's criminal. We were upset, my mother chimed in from what must have been speakerphone. We weren't thinking clearly. But we're your parents, Mackenzie. Surely we can move past this misunderstanding. This wasn't a misunderstanding, I corrected her. A misunderstanding is when we miscommunicate about dinner plans. What you did was deliberate and calculated. The point is, my father interjected, we want to apologize and start fresh. Family is more important than money. I agree completely, I replied. Which is why I was so shocked that you were willing to destroy our relationship over money that isn't even yours. There was an uncomfortable silence before my mother spoke again. Brooke is very upset. She feels like you're punishing her for our actions. I sighed, watching as the movers carried out the last of my boxes. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself from people who have demonstrated they don't have my best interests at heart. So what now? My father asked. You're just going to cut us off completely? For now, yes, I said firmly. I need time and space. I've arranged for my mail to be forwarded, and I'm moving today. Please don't try to contact me for a while. I'll reach out if I'm ready. You can't just disappear, my mother protested. We're your family. Family doesn't break into each other's homes and destroy their property, I reminded her. I have to go now. As I ended the call, a text came through from Brooke. I know you're angry, but you're being unfair. I had nothing to do with what Mom and Dad did. Call me when you stop being so selfish. The lack of self-awareness was staggering. I blocked her number without responding. That afternoon, as I was settling into my new apartment, a modern one-bedroom in a secure building with a 24-hour doorman, I received an email notification from my bank. The lottery funds had been deposited. It was official. I was now a millionaire. I sat on my new couch, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and allowed myself a moment to truly feel the significance of this change. Despite all the family drama, the betrayal, the hurt, this was still an incredible blessing. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. All settled in? How's the new place? It's perfect, I replied. And the money just hit my account. Champagne time, she responded immediately. I'll be there in 30 minutes. We're celebrating properly this time. As I awaited Rachel's arrival, I reflected on how differently everything might have unfolded if my family had simply been happy for me. If they had respected my autonomy and my right to make my own financial decisions. If their love had truly been unconditional. But their actions had revealed important truths, painful ones, yes, but necessary to acknowledge. And perhaps that clarity was its own kind of fortune. When Rachel arrived with champagne and takeout from my favorite restaurant, we toasted not just to my financial windfall, but to new beginnings and true friendship. To boundaries, Rachel said, raising her glass. And to seeing people clearly, I added, clinking my glass against hers. As we ate and talked about my plans, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. The money would change my life, but the most valuable change had already occurred. I had finally recognized my own worth and stood firm in protecting it. The weeks following my move were filled with a strange mix of exhilaration and adjustment. With Miss Thornton's guidance, I systematically addressed my financial priorities. First, those student loans, nearly $68,000 worth of debt that had shadowed me since graduation. Submitting that final payment brought an unexpected emotional release. I actually cried as I clicked the Pay Off Remaining Balance button. Next, I established a robust emergency fund and set up diverse investment accounts for long-term growth and security. I purchased a modest but beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with excellent security features. Nothing extravagant or flashy, just a solid, comfortable home that I owned outright, no mortgage hanging over my head. You're being remarkably sensible, Miss Thornton commented during one of our meetings. Most clients in your position immediately buy luxury cars or take lavish vacations. I've waited too long for financial security to risk it now, I explained. Though, I did book a 2-week trip to New Zealand for next month, I added with a smile. I'm not completely boring. At work, I gave my notice, explaining to my surprised supervisor that I'd come into an unexpected inheritance, a small lie that seemed safer than announcing a lottery win. I agreed to stay on for 6 weeks to train my replacement. Through it all, I maintained my distance from my immediate family. They continued their attempts to contact me, sometimes apologetic, sometimes accusatory, but I held firm. I did, however, cautiously reconnect with a few extended family members who had reached out with genuine concern. Aunt Helen and I started meeting for coffee every other week. During one meeting, she updated me on the family situation. "Your parents are telling everyone they're giving you space," she said with a knowing look. "But the reality is they're beside themselves that they can't find your new address." "Have they shown any real remorse?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She shook her head. "They're convinced they were justified in trying to help you see reason. Your mother actually said they did it because they love you too much to let you make such a selfish mistake." I sighed. "And Brooke?" "Well, that's interesting," Aunt Helen said, leaning forward. "Her business has officially folded. Apparently, she took out some high-interest loans she can't repay." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want my sister to suffer. "Don't be too sorry," Aunt Helen replied. "Your parents refinanced their house to bail her out again." "They what?" I was genuinely shocked. My parents were in their early 60s and had been planning to retire. That's their retirement security. "I know," Aunt Helen said grimly. "I tried to talk them out of it, but they insisted Brooke had no other options. She could get a job, like everyone else," I pointed out. "That's what I said," Aunt Helen chuckled. "But you know how they are with her. Always the exceptional child who deserves exceptional support." The conversation left me troubled. While I had maintained my boundaries, I didn't wish financial hardship on my parents. I decided to consult Miss Thornton about potentially setting up a small retirement fund for them. Not now, but perhaps in the future, when emotions had settled. Meanwhile, I was discovering the joy of financial freedom coupled with purpose. With Miss Thornton's help, I established a modest foundation focused on providing financial literacy education to young adults. I partnered with local community colleges to offer workshops on budgeting, understanding credit, and basic investing, all the knowledge I had struggled to acquire on my own. I also made anonymous donations to causes I cared about: a shelter for domestic violence survivors, the public library that had been my sanctuary growing up, and a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. These acts of giving brought me more satisfaction than any luxury purchase could have. I wasn't just changing my own life, I was creating ripple effects that might change others' lives, too. Rachel remained my steadfast supporter. When I confessed my guilt about not helping Brooke, despite having the means, she provided a valuable perspective. "Your sister doesn't need a bailout. She needs to learn consequences," Rachel pointed out. "If you step in now, you're just replacing your parents as her safety net. Nothing will change." "I know you're right," I sighed. "But I still feel this nagging guilt." "That's because you're a good person," Rachel said firmly. "But being a good person doesn't mean being a doormat. You can be generous without being exploited." About 3 months after the burning incident, I received an unexpected email from Brooke. Unlike her previous messages, this one seemed more reflective. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened," it read. "I realize now how entitled I must have seemed about your lottery win. The truth is, I was desperate. My business was failing and I was too proud to admit it. That doesn't excuse my behavior or Mom and Dad's, but I wanted you to know that I understand better now why you reacted the way you did. I miss my sister." I read the email several times, trying to gauge its sincerity. Was this a genuine moment of growth for Brooke, or another manipulation tactic now that her financial situation had deteriorated? After careful consideration, I replied with a brief, but not unkind, message. "Thank you for your email, Brooke. I appreciate your reflection on what happened. I'm still processing everything and need more time before considering any kind of reconciliation. I hope you're finding your way forward." Her response came quickly. "I understand. For what it's worth, I've finally taken a regular job, assistant manager at Riverside Cafe. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. Take all the time you need. I'll be here if you're ready." This small evidence of Brooke taking responsibility for her own financial situation was the first positive sign I'd seen. While I wasn't ready to fully reconnect, it left me open to the possibility that genuine change might be possible eventually. As my new life took shape, I found myself experiencing a profound sense of peace. My days were filled with meaningful work through my foundation, enjoyable hobbies I'd never had time for, and genuine connections with friends and the extended family members who respected my boundaries. The wealth hadn't changed who I was at my core. I still shopped sales and felt a twinge of guilt when splurging, but it had removed the constant background anxiety about money that had been my companion for so long. More importantly, it had catalyzed a necessary transformation in how I viewed myself and my relationships. One evening, as Rachel and I enjoyed dinner on my new patio, she raised her glass in a toast. "To the unexpected silver lining," she said. "Without the lottery, you might never have seen your family so clearly or found the strength to prioritize yourself." I clinked my glass against hers, reflecting on the truth of her words. "Sometimes the greatest gift isn't the money itself," I replied, "but what it reveals about the people around you and about yourself." 1 year after that lottery ticket changed everything, I stood in the doorway of my home office, surveying the space I'd created for myself. Large windows overlooked a garden that was just beginning to bloom with spring flowers. The walls were lined with bookshelves containing volumes I'd always wanted to read. My desk, a beautiful antique I'd carefully restored, held my laptop and a neat stack of documents related to my foundation's latest financial literacy program. This room, like my new life, was entirely of my own making. Every element reflected my choices, my values, my vision, not those imposed by family expectations or financial limitations. It was a physical manifestation of the internal journey I'd undertaken over the past year. The path to healing hadn't been straightforward. There were days when I questioned my decisions, when the weight of family estrangement felt heavier than the relief of boundaries. There were nights when I dreamed about reconciliation scenarios, waking with a confused mixture of longing and resolve. My therapist, another investment in myself I'd made after the lottery, had helped me navigate these complex emotions. "Healing isn't linear," she often reminded me. "And establishing healthy boundaries with family doesn't mean you've stopped loving them. It means you've started loving yourself." That perspective had been crucial as I cautiously began reconnecting with certain family members. Aunt Helen remained a steady presence, providing updates about my parents and Brooke without pressure or judgment. Through her, I learned that my parents had finally paid off the mortgage thanks to my father postponing retirement and taking on consulting work. Brooke, meanwhile, had maintained her job at the cafe and even received a promotion to manager. According to Aunt Helen, she had also joined a financial management group and was slowly working to repair her credit. These positive developments had eventually led me to accept an invitation to meet Brooke for coffee, about 8 months after our estrangement began. We chose a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. The initial awkwardness was palpable as we settled at a corner table, each of us careful with our words. "You look good," Brooke had said, studying me. "Happy?" "I am," I confirmed. "And you?" "Aunt Helen mentioned you're doing well at the cafe." A flash of the old Brooke appeared, a slight wince at the mention of her service industry job, but it quickly passed. "It's been a learning experience," she admitted. "Not what I envisioned for myself, but I'm good at it, surprisingly." We talked carefully around the edges of the past at first, focusing on present circumstances and neutral topics. But eventually, we had to address the elephant in the room. "I'm sorry," Brooke said suddenly, interrupting a safe conversation about a new restaurant. "Not just for what happened with Mom and Dad and the check. For everything. For always expecting to be bailed out, for never considering what you might need." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. "Thank you," I said simply, giving her space to continue. "When your money didn't materialize to solve my problems, I had to face some hard truths," she continued. "I've never had to deal with consequences before. Mom and Dad always fixed everything, and I let them because it was easier. It's a pattern that started when we were kids," I acknowledged. "It wasn't entirely your fault, but I participated in it," she countered. "And I benefited from it at your expense." "I see that now." That first meeting had ended with a tentative hug and a promise to try again in a few weeks. We'd had several more coffee dates since then, each one a little more comfortable than the last. We weren't best friends. Too much history stood between us for that. But we were finding a new, more balanced way to be sisters. My parents were a more complicated matter. While I'd exchanged a few brief emails with them, I wasn't ready for in-person contact. Their apologies still carried undertones of justification, suggesting they hadn't fully recognized the gravity of their actions or the patterns that led to them. "You'll know when or if you're ready," my therapist had assured me. And it's perfectly acceptable if that time never comes. That permission to prioritize my own well-being without guilt had been transformative. I'd spent so much of my life accommodating others' needs and expectations that establishing firm boundaries felt like learning a foreign language. But with practice, it was becoming more natural. The lottery money, while providing material security, had been merely the catalyst for this more profound personal growth. The true wealth I'd gained was in self-knowledge and self-respect. This perspective informed how I managed my financial windfall as well. Rather than defining myself by my bank account or allowing money to become my primary identity, I viewed it as a tool, one that could provide security, yes, but also one that could create positive impact. Through my foundation, I'd helped fund financial literacy programs that had reached over 500 young adults in the past year. The feedback from participants was often emotional. Many shared stories of being the first in their families to understand compound interest, investment basics, or the true cost of credit card debt. "You're not just teaching them about money," one community college partner had told me. "You're breaking generational patterns." That comment had resonated deeply with me. Breaking patterns. Wasn't that exactly what I'd done in my own life? As I moved from my office to the kitchen to prepare dinner, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Just confirmed reservations for New Zealand 2.0 next month. Pack your hiking boots." I smiled, thinking about our upcoming adventure, our second trip to New Zealand, this time to explore the southern island. Rachel had been my rock throughout this transformative year, celebrating my victories and providing perspective during moments of doubt. "Can't wait," I texted back, thinking of adding a stop in Australia this time. Her reply was immediate. "Yes, let's do it." The freedom to make such decisions, to travel, to explore, to expand my horizons, was something I never took for granted. Neither was the autonomy to choose how I spent my time. In addition to managing my foundation, I'd started taking classes in furniture restoration, a hobby I'd always been interested in but never had time to pursue. My dining room table was currently covered with the components of an antique radio cabinet I was bringing back to life. As I prepared a simple but delicious dinner of salmon and roasted vegetables, I reflected on how my relationship with money had evolved. The initial panic about making mistakes with my windfall had given way to confidence in my careful decisions. The fear that wealth might change me fundamentally had been replaced by the understanding that it had simply revealed and amplified who I already was. Most importantly, I'd learned that financial wealth, while providing comfort and opportunities, wasn't the most valuable currency in life. Trust, respect, authentic connection. These were the true treasures, and they couldn't be purchased at any price. After dinner, I settled on my porch swing with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined the life I now lived. Not just because of the financial changes, but because of the emotional freedom I'd claimed. The lottery had given me $2,500,000. But my own choices had given me something far more precious, a life aligned with my values, relationships based on mutual respect, and the quiet confidence that came from knowing my own worth. For anyone watching this who might be struggling with family boundaries or finding your own voice, I truly hope my story encourages you. It's never too late to recognize your value and require others to respect it. The path isn't easy, but the peace waiting on the other side is worth every difficult step. If my journey has resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? What helped you find the courage to stand firm? Share your experiences below and know that your story matters too. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to hear more real-life stories like mine, and hit that like button if this resonated with you. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the greatest twist in your story is the moment you decide to become its author.